Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Sopal. I am back in the studio today working on another cute little journal. And so if you're just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I hope if you enjoy this video, you'll give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. If you want a notification when I do post something new, click on the little bell. Okay, so I have been working on these little journals. I know I was going to switch gears and work on some finishing of something up, but I had so much fun doing this one and it turned out really cute. So if you haven't seen this video, I will put a link down below so that you can take a look at the final flip through. I didn't do a tutorial video on this at all, but I just did a flip through. So I've added a little pack with this cute little envelope that I've made. And I just put some of the scraps in there so that way they're available when this journal is ready to be decorated. So I may or may not be selling it. I haven't decided. I really like it, and so I'm hanging on to it for now. But in the meantime, I did have a lot of comments about liking the size of it, so I've pulled out a couple. In fact, I have the next little one that I'm going to work on, another little small one. So I am going to kind of keep making some with the different small books that I have. So I have one where I've been working on a spine cover. So I wanted to show you kind of how I go about putting together something like this. So these are going to be my signatures. I'm going to set them aside just for a bit here and show you where I started. I don't always do things in the same order. Sometimes I work on the insides first and then worry about the cover. But for this one, I grabbed a cover. It has a spine that's, in pretty good shape considering how old this book is. It's, tattered. I like grungy things, so I like to find really old, yucky books. That way I don't feel as bad about taking them apart. So I had this cover and I wanted to make a spine cover for it. I grabbed a piece of lace. So this is the lace that I used. And that way you can see I kind of used the lace itself to help guide the design. I don't always work that way. If you looked at the other one, I kind of just did a little grouping of flowers and things, not really using the background lace as part of my pattern. So this one I decided to kind of take cues from the pattern that was here. And as you can see, what ended up happening is the center of my lace is really kind of here. And I ended up making my focal point a little offset to the center. I don't know if you can see that. If I fold this in half, I think you can kind of get a better idea. It's kind of, the center's kind of here. So it's going to work out fine, but you might want to be aware of that if you're going to use a lace and then use it to help define your pattern and where that center might end up being. For this one, I think when I attach it, I didn't want to cover up too much of this anyway. So I'm almost thinking, because I ended up putting these little bits of doily, and then I kind of, if you see, I stitched it on with sort of a stitch that kind of reminded me of what was in the middle of this flower. And then I added the vintage buttons. And so I'm half tempted when I put this on that I may center the buttons on the back spine, because that way when it's sitting on a shelf or something, it'll look like this. And then it's a little more on the back, you can see, than on the front. So I'm not sure. I think I'll be able to tell better when I get the book put together, this signature sewn in, so it'll have some kind of the width that I'm going to have. And then I can kind of see what might happen then is those buttons may end up kind of being where it folds over, which may end up looking odd if you were to put it on a shelf this way. I guess I should turn it so you can see it. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but that's what I did. I kind of did this part first, and then I was moving this way in my design. I did show a picture, I think, of it while it was in progress, and you can see I've changed something that I did. I had this gold, and then I ended up not liking it. And then I just kind of did some different little medallion-y flower and sort of things where this little bit was. So anyway, I just played around, tried to do something a little different. But I like how that's going to look on the front cover. It's going to be simpler on the very front, and then a totally different look on the back. Okay, so I have that ready to go. When you do those, you can really kind of do them any width you want. I think it's kind of nice to come a certain distance on either side. But again, depending on what is on your cover, you might not want to cover too much of that. So that's why it might end up sort of that way. Okay, moving on. The next thing I needed to do was I knew I wanted to cover the whole inside because this was kind of not nice. And so I found a piece of fabric, and the color is really kind of odd. The design of this has the, you know, a branch coming through here with flowers. Then it's kind of that Art Nouveau, Art Deco kind of look where there's some like graphic design there, some kind of geometric kind of feel. So I found a fabric that I had, and this is really just kind of red and a faded black. And so I thought this fabric, even though it's kind of a dark green, blue, gray kind of thing, it's not really black, but it almost feels that way. So I did like how that looks inside with it. So, and it kind of pulled out that I put this green in my embroidered piece. So I kind of like that. I went ahead and just sometimes when I do the insides this way, and you could also use paper for this, you could do the fabric just on a narrower piece. That's what we're going to use as I go to show you. If you haven't watched my previous videos where I've done this, we're going to be gluing that down to the cover after we sew our signatures in. So you could do just fabric there, and a lot of times I use just my, you know, scrim, some kind of thin gauzy fabric, and then you can just put your paper, a piece of paper that has maybe something printed on it that looks like the inside book pages. So let's see, where is an example? Okay, sort of an example of that would be where I sewed this one in. So I sewed my signatures to a piece. This is what I call scrim, that's like gauzy fabric, and just glued that down. And then what you would take what is this inside paper that's on a book, and you could do that in paper instead of fabric, and have it cover this fabric that you've glued down. So you can do it different ways, but for this one, I am going to do one large piece of fabric. I went ahead and tore it. Sometimes when I do this, like in the previous one, I left it larger. That way, if I didn't get my fabric on perfectly straight, I could just trim it, which is what I did on this one. And again, it's the same thing where I just had a large piece instead of that smaller strip. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here. Then I have a piece somewhere that I already cut. You can just use some recycled cardboard. This is just some from my sticker sheets. So it's just a thin piece of cardstock. And that's going to be what I sew my signatures to. And so my spine, if I measured my spine, where this chipboard is on either side, you want to leave a little gap so that when kind of the thickness of a ruler, so that when we put this fabric on, there's a gap between this chipboard and this piece of cardboard. So when I measured, I kind of measured leaving that gap. And it can be like a 1/16 of an inch is fine. It doesn't have to be huge. So I measured that a 1-inch spine would be a nice size for this. So I cut my piece, and it's 1 inch. And then I measured the same thing, leaving a little gap at the top and a little gap at the bottom. So for the length, I measured 6 5/8 for the height, even though my actual book is 7 inches. So I've cut this that smaller size. So you can see, maybe I'll go in here closer. I have a little gap at the top and at the bottom. Now for this piece, you can, if depending on what your material looks like, this looks pretty clean. I don't really see anything on it. I can put it this way. We're going to do a floating spine, which means there's going to be a gap between this fabric and the spine that holds the signatures. If you're going to see that at all, like if you happen to make it too tall or something, you might want to cover the end of this with some plain paper, something if you need to hide anything unattractive. For this one, I don't think that's going to be an issue for me. I'm going to end up, because this fabric is so dark, I'm going to glue it down this way. So you're not going to really see anything there. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is lay it this way and put some glue on it. And because I covered this, I cut this the exact size I need already, I want to get it centered. I think I'm going to lay it here like this and stick that down. So I haven't done it this way before, but I think that way I will get this put onto this piece of fabric exactly where I need it. So I'm going to use, you could even just use glue stick probably, because we're going to end up sewing onto this anyway. But I'm going to use my PVA pH neutral glue, and I'll put a link down below for this. This is bookbinding glue, but you can just use any kind of white PVA glue. And where is my little silicone spreader? And this is all really kind of going to be hidden. You're not going to really see it, so I'm not too worried about it. So I have it where I want it on my spine, leaving that gap. This is really the sort of imperfect way to do this, but I'm going to try it anyway. And then just so that I make sure and this glue is going to soak through, so I put a little more than I needed. I'm going to use that so that I don't have to touch it. And that way I have it right where I wanted it. Now, a smart thing to do would be to mark what the top is in case I don't have it quite straight. So I think and this is just a brayer that I use for anything I glue. It's pretty grungy. So I just use it for gluey things. So I'm going to put a T for top on here just so that I know where that is. I guess a baby wipe would be nice. Okay, so you want to let that dry. You can see I put way too much glue, but it'll dry and that'll be fine because it's going to be hidden. So the next thing I need to do is work on my signatures. So for this one, I decided to go through my book pages, mostly book pages, I think, and some plain paper. If you've watched before, I keep these bins of kind of pre-made folios for my signatures. And so what I usually do is I go through all of them and I grab a variety of old book page in different colors, in different languages maybe if I have that. I like to use map and music paper and dictionary page and that kind of thing. So I go through and I just grab all those signatures. For this one, I'm not doing a bunch of printed digitals like I have in the other ones. I don't know, maybe I'll add some. I'm not sure. I don't think I will. I think I already had to take some out because I had grabbed too many papers. So I start by just grabbing those pages, and they're all different sizes. And because this book is really small, they were mostly too big for this book. So the first thing that I do is I go and try to at least get them close to the size that I need for my book. And so to do that, I'm going to measure this chipboard piece. And so for this book, if I measure 4 inches, leaves me a little bit of room here. So 4 inches wide. And then again, I kind of want to go where the top and bottom of this paper was, and that is 6 5/8. So 6 5/8 by 4 are what I need my each folio to be. So if you've never done these before, A folio is really just a piece of paper folded in half. So in this case, it was a dictionary page. And I because it was a large dictionary, I already put some folds in it just to kind of get at the width that I needed. And then I trimmed the height with my paper cutter. Now, you don't have to have these all be the same height. They can be different. They can also be different this way. And I kind of like that. It gives some nice movement inside visually. So when I do this, I kind of grab all the papers and then I sort them. Once I had them all trimmed down roughly, I sort them by maybe book pages, text, maybe maps, some plain paper, foreign language paper, music paper, so that I kind of have piles. And then I know for my book, especially this size, I like to do 3 signatures. The signature is when you put these folios together in a grouping, that is 1 signature. So for me, I have made 3 signatures. And to get those kind of organized the way I want, I take my piles where I've sorted kind of by what kind of paper I've used, and I just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and go stack them that way. They're not in any particular order except that I'm taking one group at a time. So maybe I only have 3 pieces of music page. They're different from each other, but they're both all music. So I'll put 1 of each. Maybe I have 1 of each map. Maybe I have 3 different kinds of lined or graphed paper in each one, that kind of thing. So you kind of get the idea. Then from there, I take that stack, this stack, and I start putting it together in some way that I know this is going to be my front. So I do a plain one. Maybe this would be printed with a picture or something if you're using digitals. But I wanted to kind of alternate between text or which direction they're going. So here I have a single page and I folded it in half this way so it's smaller. And then I have a digital print of a map. It was a little large, so I folded up a pocket. Another one with text, some lined paper that's folded up with a pocket. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to these. They're not going to stay in this way. But you can just see I kind of alternate so that I don't have like maybe 2 texts in the same color right next to each other, just to give it some variety. Okay, so this is one of my signatures. So I do that to all 3. I've got all 3 of them in the order that I wanted. Now, in my case, it wasn't really counting how many pages I had in each one. I just did pages I liked, and I ended up with way too many, and it was too thick. It's still pretty thick, probably too thick, but I don't care. They all end up being what we call a gator mouth anyway. When you start decorating and adding things, they won't close. They'll be like this. They'll just want to stay open. But that's kind of the fun, is filling them up and having them just kind of exploding. So the next thing I need to do is maybe look at each one, see what needs to be reinforced. Maybe I'm making things into pockets or flips, that kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of show you that part because I don't show that part of my process very often. So I have these, and you can see once I've stacked them inside each other, find my center, even when I have them kind of tight, some of the pages, even though I cut them 4 inches, they've moved further out, so they may hang out and be too large. This white one I can see sticking out too much. Now, if you want them, they can be sticking out all over, and that's just kind of a fun look too, where you have some that are too tall. Sometimes you like to add an edge that's maybe a lacy border or something like that, and those will stick out. So it's really your own aesthetic, what you want to do. I'm going to kind of start with keeping them trimmed into the book because I may add things decoratively as I go that have them sticking out, or add tabs or that kind of thing. So I'm going to start with just kind of seeing what's too big. And as I'm looking at this, it's really this white one is jumping out at me. So I'm going to go trim this a little bit more. You can trim these with a cutter. You can do them by hand. You can use a ruler and tear it. Because I'm not going to do too much off of this one, I'm going to use my guillotine cutter because that will make it easier to make it straight. Sometimes you might just want to fold them. You know, I could instead of cutting this one, just fold it over, and then it has a place to tuck things. I don't want to do it on this plain white one because this is good just plain writing space. So I think I'm just going to go. Okay, so I've trimmed this one actually less than 4 inches because where it sat in my book, it was pushing out. So I think this will be better. So now you can see with them all stacked, I'm still a little bit over my 4 inches, but that's okay. They're gonna fit in like this, you know, and they really, my book was a little bit wider than that. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave this because I don't mind them sticking out, but if you do, if that bothers you, you could maybe trim like this one in the middle. It's the ones closer to the middle that, you know, they're coming out further. So that one's okay for now. Let's see if I have anything sticking out too far in this one. I have a few, and some of them may be folded things. So let me start with this one in the very middle. So because it's a folded one, this is a piece of tracing paper that I had tea stained, and I like how it has that sort of crispy sound. So let me just maybe fold that. And see if that helped. Yeah, that's not bad. I'm not going to worry about some of these other ones. I think they're folded too. That one is. I could fold those more if I want as I'm putting this together, and I can also trim any I need to with just scissors. So I think that one's okay. And then this one, let's see the middle pages. So this one I can trim. That's an easy one. I think I'll do this one too. And you see how this has the ragged edge, and I like that. I like the variety. Okay, so that's better too. It's to the edge, but I don't mind it being a little bit more. This one's folded, so I could actually fold that one in more if I need to. Okay, so I have those better trimmed to fit in my book. So I like that, that's fine. Now the next thing I need to do is, again, going one signature at a time, is look at my pages and where I folded things, decide if I want it to be a pocket or a flip or what I want it to do, if it needs to be reinforced or anything like that. So this one, I have a pocket here, and it folds over here. Now, because I want this to keep bulk out if possible, I'm gonna think about that as I work. So for this one first, I have this pocket, and one thing that kind of can help me, you don't have to do this, but if it's thicker paper, sometimes it's nice to make a slit here, and then you can actually then add, I'll show you here. So if I cut this, you can add a gusset to it. So I'm gonna cut this. And that way I can actually glue in another piece here. And I think I want to have this be a little reinforced on the edge because it's pretty thin. So I'm gonna just fold it right on that line because that's just a convenient place. And that doubled up just that edge. So I'm gonna glue that down, and I think I'm gonna grab this and just use a glue stick. And you can either use, if you have a bone folder or something, or a credit card, just to kind of get that nice and smooth, like so. And then if I want to add a gusset, I think what I'll do though is give myself some room in that seam and cut just a little bit of an angle there. That way I'm not bulking up that fold too much. Okay. And then what I can do is, if you don't have to do this, you can just put a little glue and make the pocket that way. And you can also make a notch here if you want. I don't want to do it on this one here right now because my glue is wet and it won't go through my little circle punch, which is what I would use to make a little notch. So you want to make sure your glue's dry before you try to do this. So I think I'll wait on that. Okay, so what I mean by a gusset is, I have to the side here, you can't see, but this is where I was trimming off all of those folios to begin with. So I end up with lots of little scraps of paper that are handy to use to decorate this. So I'm just gonna grab, let's see, a smaller piece so I don't waste any. I'm gonna grab just a little piece of book page and see, this might be too brittle. But to make, is that gonna be too brittle? Some old book pages are brittle where you can kind of see they're gonna crack. So I don't wanna use that. I'm gonna use, this is some tea stained paper, but it's new paper, so it's gonna be sturdier. So I'm gonna actually take and cut kind of the height of my pocket. And it can be a little short, it doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm gonna fold them in half. This is actually much larger than I need it to be. So I think actually I'll just use one and fold it. So I'm gonna cut that in half and then fold that in half again. And then this one, and so now I have two gussets. And that's just gonna give you some room to expand what you put inside of your pocket, okay? So you're gonna glue one side. You can use PVA for this, or art glitter glue, anything like that. I'm just using glue stick because it's less wet. So now my fold is on that outside, and I'll do this one. And then I glue it there and I have my pocket. So it just allowed me, it's gonna allow me to have a little bit of room in that pocket to put things, okay? Now, if this is dry enough, let's see if it is. If it's not, a trick that you can do is to add another piece of paper to it. And I'm just gonna eyeball kind of where the center is and use a circle punch. And you can make a little notch. You don't have to do that. I'm just showing you just an idea. And hopefully this will work. It's still a little bit wet, but it worked through here, so that's good. So I have my little notch, okay, and then my little gussets. Now, what I would do here before I glue that is, if you like to do any stitching on your sewing machine, you would do that now. If you want to use any of your, I like Distress Oxide Vintage Photo. If you want to age up just that edge, it allows you kind of to see it a little more. You could do that before you glue it down, okay? And you can see that Vintage Photo is really similar to the color of my tea staining. So I could now just glue this and have my pocket be finished, this one. And sometimes art glitter glue is better for this, just because you can see where you're getting the glue. I don't want to get it on the inside of my pocket. Okay, and now I have a cute little pocket there. Okay, so that's one. I don't know if I put enough glue. I'm afraid to try to use my art glitter glue because sometimes I forget to poke a hole and make sure it's working before I turn the camera on. Okay, so that would be one pocket made and not decorated. And then this one, and then I have this bit here that I want to get rid of. So I can do the same thing here. I can cut, let me fold down that line. But then I want to cut this off. And then I can do the same thing if I want here and just trim this. Let me glue this first. I don't always do this with gussets, but it's nice to take the time to do it, because in the end, I think you end up with a better product. Oh, did I trim that? No, I didn't. Let's do this side, since I forgot to trim that side. So I'm just going to trim just a sliver off of this. Again, so that it gives me a little gap there. It takes the bulk out of the spine edge. Okay, so I've got that one, this one. And obviously that angle is there, so you're kind of laying this down at an angle also. So it's a good idea to have it not quite as long as my pocket. Okay, and then I could do the same thing once this is dry. I can glue, do my aging and glue that down. And then for this side, now this is going to be a tuck this way. And this one, I might want this edge reinforced just because it's that single layer again. So I need to find something here that is long enough. And this is a good place to use some of your, let's see if I have any long enough, some of your brittle pages that you might not want to use for something else. That was a good length. Now the other thing that I could do is, if I wanted, I could use this on the outside. It just gives it a different design instead of the same paper like this. So you could put it either way. I kind of like how grungy that is though, so I'm going to put this on the inside. That's where you could also use a decorative paper, and do this as a decorative part, which you can still do afterwards. I'm just getting it. You could add something to the outside. I just want to know for sure that I have this reinforced, just in case I want to leave it pretty much like that. And then you could gusset this or not. It's long enough. It's really going to be a tuck. So I think gluing that down, just like it is, it's a little bit long here though. So trim that. And that's okay. So for this, I would use the art glitter glue just so it's nice and sturdy. If you're not familiar, I'll put a link down below, but it's just a nice sticks everything kind of glue. And I don't have my fine tip. It comes with, I'll show you my fine tip applicator. I haven't used this in a little while, and if you're not using it every day, you'll get some dry glue in there and then it doesn't work as well. Okay, so there's that one. Now, also, if you like stitching on your sewing machine, which I haven't been doing for a while, you would do that before you sew them into your signatures. But I'm kind of going to sell these as naked journals, so I don't want to get too carried away. So this art glitter glue, when you buy it, this is actually just a little bit bigger bottle. It also comes with this little fine applicator, and it has a little pin that I always tend to pull the ball off of. So I have just added a little tassel, but they work great, but this one is kind of clogged, so I don't want to use it right now. Okay, so I have that one. Once I get this edge done, now I've made a folio that has 2 pockets and a little tuck. Okay, so that's my first one. You see why this is, I don't always do this on camera because this can take a long time if you have a lot of these. So my next one, I don't need anything. This one, I don't need anything. But I would look, if this was a brittle page and I thought this was gonna break, I could reinforce that. This is a printed digital. It's printed just onto some coffee stained paper. And it was, oh no, you know what? This was the original mat. It's not printed. This was an original, let's see, I need to go out here. This was an original map. I can tell by the paper, and it was large. I don't even think I coffee stained this. I think that was how it was. But I folded it up because it's kind of thin, so that will reinforce my pocket without having to do anything else. So I could do the same thing, you know, make that cut there so that I don't have all this bulk in my signature, which is probably a good idea. So I would just do the same thing, glue this. That'll be my pocket. And then I'm going to cut this. Now I could, since I'm going to do both sides anyway, I could just fold it in half and cut that little bit out. And see, that way it leaves this gap. So now my signature, my spine is thinner. It's not so bulky. And I still have that pocket there. So I could do a gusset on this one too if I want. But let's just say, for sake of time, I'm not going to do that on this one. So I could just glue it down and call it good. Now, the other thing I could do is, because I'm going to sell this as a naked journal, and I think I might do it on this one, is if you're doing this at home for yourself and you're going to decorate the whole journal, you can think ahead of each page and what you're going to do with it. I have done journals where I decorate everything before I sew the signatures in. And for some journals where I'm going to do a lot of sewing and that sort of thing, that's actually not a bad idea. Because I don't know what the end person might want. They might want a gusset here. They might want to make a gusset out of fabric. They might want to notch it or not notch it, or you know, distress that edge or something first. So I'm going to leave these loose, but I have them reinforced and my little notch cut so that I can get them sewn in. So I'm just going to leave that one like that, because my intention is to, you know, make these and sell them as naked journals. That way you can do all the decorating. Okay, this one, it's a really old paper. It's kind of fragile in the spine. You can see the little holes, and it's not really sturdy. So I think for that one, I want to reinforce this. To reinforce them, you can use washi tape, which I would glue down normally if it's not sticky enough, especially on the papers that are kind of linen-y, cottony feeling, because it doesn't stick as well to that. You could add another, just a piece, reinforcer with another piece of paper. Actually, if I wanted to, I could. That might not be a bad idea, because I have this extra piece and I need to reinforce this. I could make a flip there. Okay, so I think I'm going to do that. This just gave me that idea. So what I need another fold in it. So I'm going to fold it again. That way I can glue all of this down, and then this is a flip. if that makes sense. Okay, so I've made like a little accordion fold because I want to glue on both sides of this. So I'm going to put glue. I have that's where my seam is going to be. It's where it's going to get stitched in, but I want this to also lay flat. So I think you'll understand when I get it glued down. So I'm just going to use my glue stick. So I'm kind of adding in another page in addition to reinforcing that spine. Okay, so I have reinforced my spine. And I could just have trimmed this, but then it's easier to work on if I'm able to fold it back and forth. So I like that I added that extra fold in there. So it's kind of like a little accordion sort of deal. I hope that made sense how I just did that. See, it's glued down both sides, and then I just folded again back into the center, but it's loose. Okay, so that's another one. And then this one again, I made a pocket. Instead of making my pockets on the inside, I just folded it back the other way. But same thing, I might want to trim this just so when I sew it into my signatures, it could also just be a flip down because it's good writing paper. So I think I might do that. And I'm going to trim it even less, just barely trim that because I'm not going to make those a pocket. So what that did is, because this is good lined writing paper, I can write all the way down and just fold it up. Same thing here and same thing here. So I'm going to leave those that way. And then this one. That one's also in good shape. This is just some tea stained paper. And you can stagger them so they're not, you know, all lined up. This one, let's see. It's older, but it seems to be okay. You could always add tape or something later if it becomes fragile. And then this was actually, oh no, this is some wrapping paper. So it's a newer paper with this big pattern on it, so it's fine too. Okay, so that one, everything's reinforced and I know where my pockets and things are all gonna be. So that one's ready to go. And then this video is getting really long, so I may not do these on camera, but you get the idea. I need to do the same thing to these two signatures. And then in the next video, I will go ahead and put them all together and put the book together. So how about we do that since this one's going long? So I will work on that tomorrow and maybe, or the next day, and do another video. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.